A DNA test revealed I wasn't my father's daughter. But when we met my biological dad, my father turned white. He recognized the stranger from an old photo that connected our families in an unbelievable way. I'm Bella, 42, and until recently I believed I knew exactly who I was. My mom, Laura, is fair-skinned with blonde hair, while my dad, Anthony, has that classic Italian look, olive skin, dark hair, strong features. Growing up, I was the spitting image of my dad, while my sister Maria takes after our mom. I used to joke that maybe mom wasn't my real mother because I inherited practically nothing from her. The irony of that joke haunts me now. Dad and I always had this special connection. He taught me to make his grandmother's lasagna recipe when I was just 8, standing on a kitchen chair so I could reach the counter. We'd spend Sundays watching football together while Mom and Maria went shopping. He never missed a single one of my softball games, even driving 6 hours once when I had an away tournament after he'd worked a double shift. I thought that bond was because we were so alike, both in appearance and personality. Now I wonder if he was trying to make up for something he always suspected deep down. Last year, Maria and I decided to do one of those ancestry DNA tests, mostly for fun. We'd been watching those videos where people discover their 25%, something they never knew about. Maria thought maybe we'd find some exotic heritage to brag about at family gatherings. I remember how we laughed as we spit into those little tubes, making faces at each other over how gross it was. The memory of that lighthearted moment makes what happened next even more jarring. When the results came back, they hit me like a truck. Maria was listed as my maternal half-sister, not my full sister. The test also showed a match to someone named Robert, listed as my biological father with 99.9% certainty. My mind raced. Who the hell was Robert? Had my mom had an affair? Was I adopted? Nothing made sense. I didn't tell anyone at first. For 3 days, I carried this secret alone, unable to eat or sleep properly. I kept staring at Dad, at Anthony, during dinner, studying his features that I thought were mirrored in my own. Had I just imagined our similarities all these years? Was our special bond built on a biological lie? When I finally confronted Mom, her face went completely white, then flushed deep red. "That's impossible," she insisted, her voice trembling. "I met your father exactly 1 year before you were born, and I didn't sleep with another man until after our divorce in 2001. She kept repeating it like a mantra, growing more agitated with each denial. "The DNA doesn't lie, Mom," I said, showing her the results on my phone. She pushed it away like it was something dangerous. "Those tests are wrong all the time," she said, not meeting my eyes. "They mix up samples, they make mistakes." I reached out to this Robert through the Ancestry platform, trying to make sense of it all. His response only added to the mystery. He lived in New Jersey and had never been to St. Louis where we lived. He'd never met my mother before and had no idea how this could be possible. The conception would have happened in December 1980, when both he and my mom were supposedly home with their families for Christmas, in states 1,000 miles apart. "I'm happily married with 3 kids and 4 grandchildren," he wrote. "I've never been unfaithful to my wife. I'm as confused as you are." "There has to be some mistake," I told Maria as we pored over the results again. That's when we noticed something else strange. Robert was actually listed as a distant paternal cousin to Maria. Was this just a glitch in Ancestry's system? We convinced ourselves it had to be. The alternative was unthinkable. "Maybe their algorithms are just confused because he's distantly related to Dad," Maria suggested, looking relieved. "That would explain why he shows up so prominently in your results." I wanted to believe that. We decided to leave it alone for a while, filing it away as some bizarre technical error. But it gnawed at me. At night, I'd find myself staring at Robert's profile picture, searching for any resemblance. Dad Anthony overheard us discussing it during a family dinner. I noticed how quiet he became, how his hands trembled slightly as he held his wine glass. A week later, he called me. "Bella, I can't sleep. I need to know the truth," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I'd never heard him sound so vulnerable. "I've ordered a DNA test. I need to be sure." The wait for his results was excruciating. We barely spoke about it, but it hung between us like a storm cloud. When he finally called me to come over, I knew from his voice that everything had changed. He took a DNA test himself. The results confirmed what I'd been trying to deny. Anthony wasn't my biological father. He was Maria's father, but not mine. And there was more. Robert, my apparent biological father, was distantly related to Anthony. They shared a common Italian ancestor from 4-5 generations back. The test also listed me as a distant cousin to Anthony, with Robert and Maria appearing as shared matches between us. When I met with Dad to talk about it, I expected anger or betrayal. Instead, I found him sitting in his armchair, looking oddly calm but exhausted, like he'd been carrying a weight for decades. "I always suspected something," he admitted quietly. "Your mom had a type. She always flirted with men who looked like me. This Robert probably looks like me too." He took a deep breath before continuing. "Ask your mom if she was in New Orleans for New Year's Eve, 1980. She was 19. She told me once that she kissed a stranger at midnight because he reminded her of me. I pretended it didn't bother me, but I never forgot." My hands shook as I called Mom. When I mentioned New Orleans and New Year's Eve 1980, her practiced denial crumbled. "Yes, I kissed someone at midnight," she admitted reluctantly. "But that was it. I felt sick afterward and went back to the hotel alone." But when I reached out to Robert again with this new information, his memory suddenly cleared. "Yes, I was in New Orleans that New Year's," he confirmed. "I remember her now. We kissed at midnight on Bourbon Street, then ran into each other again at a bar about an hour later." His voice grew hesitant. "We got intimate in a dark corner of that bar. She seemed young, I thought maybe 17, and pretty intoxicated, so I stopped things. I was 26 and felt ashamed afterward. I went home with someone else and tried to forget about it." The pieces finally fit together. That brief encounter between two strangers, one that my mother had suppressed and Robert had tried to forget, had created me. When I told Dad everything, he was quiet for a long time. Then he surprised me by saying, "He's your biological father, but I raised you. Nothing changes how I feel about you, Bella, but I think we should meet him." Last month, Dad and I flew to New Jersey to meet Robert. Walking into that cafe was surreal. It was like seeing an older version of my own face. We have the same laugh, the same way of talking with our hands. Robert brought old photos, and the resemblance was undeniable. But the real shock came when Robert pulled out a particular photo, him at age 26, the year I was conceived. Dad's face went completely white. "My God," Dad whispered, taking the photo with trembling hands. "I know him." Everyone at the table froze. Robert looked confused. "I'm sorry, but I don't recall meeting you before." Dad shook his head slowly. "Not directly, but I've seen you before." He pulled out his wallet and extracted a worn, creased photo I'd never seen before. It showed a younger version of my mom sitting on a bench with a man who looked remarkably like Dad, but wasn't him. "This is my cousin Vincent," Dad explained, his voice strained. "He lived in New Jersey. We were close as kids, but our families had a falling out when we were teenagers. I never saw him again after I was 15. Robert took the photo, his eyes widening. "Vincent DeLuca, he was my college roommate sophomore year. We lost touch after graduation." He looked up, realization dawning. "That's why you looked so familiar to me when you walked in. You remind me of Vince." The coincidence was too much to be believable. My mom had been attracted to Robert because he reminded her of Dad. But Robert had reminded Dad of his estranged cousin Vincent. And Vincent had been Robert's college roommate. "So you're saying," my voice trailed off as I tried to process this bizarre connection. Dad nodded slowly. "Your mom was always asking about Vincent after seeing his photo at my parents' house. She was fascinated by him, by our family rift. When we started dating, she'd ask me to tell stories about him." He looked at Robert. "She kissed you because you reminded her of me, but I look like Vincent, and you knew Vincent." Mom still struggles to acknowledge what happened. She maintains she has no memory beyond the midnight kiss, though Robert's recollection is supported by both his friends and Mom's cousin, who was with her that night. What's clear is that one chance encounter between two young people who were attracted to each other, because one reminded the other of someone else, created a whole human being, me. The bizarre connection through Vincent has added another layer to this already complicated situation. Dad has reached out to his cousin for the first time in nearly 45 years. They've spoken on the phone twice now. Vincent was shocked to learn about the connection, but also seemed relieved to reconnect with family after so long. Family feuds are stupid, Dad told me after their second call. All these years wasted over some property dispute our parents had. And now look, my daughter's biological father was his roommate. It's like the universe was trying to keep us connected somehow. I don't know what happens next for our family. Dad insists nothing has changed in how he feels about me, but everything has. Mom barely speaks about it, retreating into herself whenever the subject comes up. Maria has been my rock through all of this, though I catch her sometimes looking at me differently, like she's trying to see Robert in my features. And Robert, he's eager to know me, sending me old family photos and stories about his parents, my biological grandparents whom I'll never meet. He's promised to introduce me to his children, my half-siblings, when we're all ready. The strangest part is that we're planning a reunion this summer. Me, Dad, Vincent, and Robert. 4 people connected by blood, circumstance, and an unbelievable coincidence. I'm learning that family is both simpler and more complicated than DNA. Anthony will always be my real dad. But now I have this whole other branch of myself to explore, a genetic echo that extends in unexpected directions. Has anyone else discovered something like this so late in life? How did you process it? Because some days I'm fine, and other days I feel like I'm floating outside my own life, watching it unravel and reweave into something I never imagined. Edit, thank you all for the supportive comments. To address some questions, no, there was no issue of non-consent involved. Both Mom and Robert were with friends that night who still remember the encounter. From what everyone has pieced together, they were attracted to each other, and things went further than Mom wants to admit. And yes, the Vincent connection is absolutely wild. Dad showed me old photos of him and his cousin as kids, and the resemblance between all of them is uncanny.